Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I am joined in episode 10 by Boston Marathon survivor and president of Rebekah's Angel Foundation, Rebekah Gregory. Rebekah, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Simone. It's wonderful to be here.
I am super excited for this conversation to unfold. Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you're currently doing.
So my name is Rebekah Gregory. I am a motivational speaker and president of Rebekah's Angels Foundation. But kind of how I came into all of this was I was first a Boston Marathon survivor in 2013. So that year, my son and I had gone up to watch a friend of ours who was running in the race, and we just happened to be spectating in the crowd and 3 feet away from the first bomb that went off.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's a huge lasting impact of that significant event in your life, and your son's life, and your family's life, or the world, for that matter.
Oh, absolutely. It still gives me chills to talk about, but it's interesting because, I do this for a living now, talking about my story and going out there and trying to encourage others and say, the majority of people don't get blown up by a bomb at a marathon, but everyone has life blow up in their face from time to time. And it's not, our obstacles that define us. It's what we do afterwards and moving forward. And so from the very first time that I woke up from a medically induced coma, I promised myself that I was going to live my life in a way that I had never lived before. Not that I had, been a bad person or I had a terrible life. None of that. I had a wonderful life before, but I just do it in a different way now, and I'm so much more appreciative, and everything is so trivial in comparison. And so to have that happen and survive from it, knowing that there's a bigger plan for my life or I wouldn't be here, and a bigger plan for my son's life, that's a huge responsibility to live like you've never lived before.
Where does that grit, I'll use the word grit, where does that come from, that just strong determination to just, live differently based on this experience, but to build this foundation, the successful foundation, where does that come from?
I think it comes from a few places. Number one, it was my faith. The day that the bombing happened, I was thrown back on the ground, and the only thing that I could move was my head. So I was looking all around frantically because right before, my son had been sitting on my feet that day. He had gotten bored watching the runners pass, and so I told him, he was 5 at the time. So I've got a kindergartner at the marathon. He's sitting down because he had gotten bored watching, and I said, buddy, we're gonna go soon. We had been there for hours, and that's where he was when that bomb in a backpack went off 3 feet behind us. So they say that that's what saved his life ultimately, that I took everything in the back of the legs, that I acted as a human shield for him. But I know that if there wasn't a bigger plan and if God didn't have more for us to do, then neither one of us would be here. And, a lot of people look at this and say it's the physical that's the hardest part. heart, but really it's the emotional. It's everything we saw that day. It's me lying in a pool of my own blood, looking around and seeing other people's body parts laying on the ground, and nails and BBs and ball bearings and everything that these brothers packed into these pressure cooker bombs. But I not only saw that, my son saw that, my 5-year-old son. And so the aftermath was far greater than all of the surgeries. I've had 67 to date. I've lost my left leg below the knee. I have more surgery to come, but the hardest part of this has been my son not wanting to leave the house afterwards. He was scared to get back on his bike. He was scared to interact with the world because no 5-year-old should have to see something like that.
I cannot even imagine. I have a 3-year-old, and I am just, as I listen to your heart warming, I say warming because it's just, there's so many layers of complexity to it, but I as a mother, and I cannot even imagine what you have gone through and are going through. So I want to do a segue just to talk about your foundation right now. Tell us more about how that came into being and what it offers, because I know that there's some focus on education around PTSD, and just tell us a bit more about that.
So that's the exciting part, because just like you're talking so wonderfully about your own child, that's why we do what we do. Because my son just really made me realize so much that day. And when we talk about grit and determination, he was my determination. I could not, for any reason, give up, because I had him looking at me. I had him watching me every single thing that I would do. And so even when I was lying in the hospital for 56 days, he was watching me do that. And then I had to make the decision to amputate my leg below the knee a year and a half later, after I had been in bed for all that time. And the hardest part for Noah is that those emotions have to go somewhere, and he was terrified, and he didn't know what was going on and what to do. And so I had to be the strong person for him. But during all of this time, what the real miracle is that we found something that really needed to be done, and that is trauma in children getting the treatment that they needed. So from our own research, from our own experience, we saw how many children go through trauma on an everyday basis, and nearly half of them are not getting the proper treatment that they need. And so this opened my eyes to a whole new world. But it was interesting because when I sat down for my own therapy for post-traumatic stress after the bombing, I realized that what was going on was my PTSD stemmed way back from my childhood, and not just what had happened to me in Boston. I had an abusive father growing up. I watched him try to kill my mom right in front of me when I was, I believe, 9 years old. And so those things stick with you. And I also had a car accident with a deer that nearly killed me. I got held up in a Walmart parking lot and robbed at gunpoint 6 months before the Boston bombing. So there have been so many different, I know, I can't even make this stuff up. It's insane. But there's been so much trauma that I can relate on a level that I could have never related on had all this not happened to me. And in a weird way, that makes me so thankful, because while I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, I'm so grateful to be at the place that we are now, to use our struggles and use our pain and turn it into a true purpose. And that is what everyone has in common. We all go through stuff that could ultimately change the rest of our lives for the better.
Now, what were you doing career-wise before all this happened?
So career-wise, I was an account manager with a corporate housing firm. So I had gotten into sales and marketing, but previously I'd gone to school for nursing. I wanted to help people in the medical field, but life kind of happened. And so it's interesting because I feel like I'm still using all of the things that I've learned in my past. So, the a whole part of helping people, but it's just in such a different way now. And I have been a public speaker for 4 years. I'm contracted through a speakers bureau in Nashville, and that's been an amazing journey that has just been really eye-opening to me also. And I kind of wake up every morning and I think, wow, how did I get where I am right now? And it's something that I'm proud of, but it's taken me a long time to say that I'm proud, because we so often don't want to look at our lives as something that can be beautiful. And out of all tragedy comes this amazing beauty. And I have really grown into myself and into everything that I want to do. And there's so many dreams and goals in the pipeline for the future that I can't wait for.
I just love what you have just said. I created this show because I wanted to showcase people that are in the driver's seat for their lives, for their careers. And that's why I went back to what were you doing before? And I was going to ask you, did you feel that you were in the driver's seat, that you owned your career, you were responsible for the outcomes, you were navigating where you wanted to go? Answer that for me first before I continue the thought.
Before the bombing, I was not in the driver's seat. I had allowed other people to take the wheel for me. And that is something that I will never do again. I didn't believe in myself. I was self-conscious. I still am self-conscious about quite a bit. But I think that comes with being a woman and all of the daily tasks and responsibilities we have. But when you go through something that is just life-changing, you either sink or you swim. And since April 15th, 2013, I have been swimming like crazy, one-legged swimming, and with a mermaid prosthetic, because that's, the cards that I've been dealt, I mean, I would never have wanted them, but they're my cards, and I'm going to play them however I can. And I am in the driver's seat. For the first time in my life, I am driving, and it feels so good.
I love that. I think I'm going to caption your episode, that very thing. And I could hear it in the conversation that we were asking, which is why that question came up for me, because I was going to assume that you weren't and that you fully are in the driver's seat now, but I wanted you to confirm that for me, because I can definitely tell that you are in the driver's seat. So, Rebekah, tell me from your perspective, what is the formula for successfully owning your career?
I think the formula is, first of all, just laying out your cards on the table and looking at what you have. So often in life, we look for everything that we want, and I think that's great. I think we should constantly strive for everything that we want, but we also need to appreciate what's right in front of us and what God is kind of showing us that we need to do with our lives. And this has been one of the hardest parts for me, because I'm taking something that literally is just heart-wrenching. I mean, the bombing was the hardest time of our lives. It continues to be. I'm getting ready to have another surgery related to the shrapnel and the metal still left in my legs from that day, and it happened almost 6 years ago. And so every day is a constant recovery. But what we've done is we've taken the hardest part of that, the PTSD, the trauma, the aftermath, and we've turned it into something that can help so many people. And we've seen it. We moved to Florida because we believed in our foundation so much, from Houston to Florida, because we partnered with 2 doctors here that have come out with this amazing treatment for trauma. And so we knew that this is where we needed to be. And that's what happens in our lives. We have to take these chances. So we own the cards that we have. We take chances to get us to where we want to be. And we believe in ourselves the entire process.
I love that, the entire process. What does it take for you to, I don't want to say what did it take, because you kind of implied that from this incident, just to believe in yourself completely. Is there any advice that you can give to others wanting to believe in themselves completely for the entire journey?
well, I hope that it doesn't take something like this for someone to believe in themselves, but it's hard. It's really difficult to have that confidence, especially when there's so many different things in the world that are telling you otherwise. But you're here for a reason. We all have this beautiful purpose, and we all have these tools and things in our lives that are talents and what we can offer to someone that are absolutely beautiful, and they're individualized. And I think that where we go wrong in this world is that we're constantly putting ourselves against people and measuring ourselves up to one another. And we have this kind of battle, this ego battle going on, whether we realize it or not. But one of the best pieces of advice anyone has ever given to me is to surround myself with people that are smarter than me, that are more successful, that are more wealthy, you name it, all of those different categories, because that's where we learn. That's where we're able to take the next step in our journey and in our lives. And it's the most wonderful and remarkable process. When I realized I needed to stop comparing myself, stop thinking about all the things that I don't have, and appreciate everything that I do, hug my family tighter, love my friends and relatives more. I mean, just everything comes together because there is beauty in every single day, but we have to find it. And so many times you can't find it among all of the problems. But I wake up every morning and I count my blessings. I don't count my problems because they're always going to be there, but my blessings are going to far outweigh them.
I love that. And how is Noah? I think you said your son's name is Noah. How is he doing?
He is wonderful. Noah is in 6th grade. He's 11, and he is just thriving. He's a regular kid, other than the fact that he loves to tell people about the scar on the back of his head. He got blown up by a bomb in a marathon. So that's always an interesting conversation.
Oh, my goodness. I bet. Oh, my goodness. Talk to us about risk, because you talked about picking up your family and moving to a different state. How important has taking that risk been to your journey, as well as other risks that you've had to undertake?
Life is all about risks, and I've always been a pretty risky person. There's some times where that hasn't quite panned out the way I wanted it to, but in the last 6 years, when you really, when I've really come into my own and realized my unique talents and abilities in a way that I hadn't before, I started taking risks that I ultimately believed in. And this is everything from testifying in the trial of the remaining bomber to marrying my college sweetheart after 5 months of us reconnecting. But
wow.
I know. I mean, it's been a whirlwind. This 6 years has definitely been a whirlwind in my life. But I believe in stuff so much. I believe in things. And when it's meant to be, when it's the right thing for you, you just know it. You have this peace about what you're doing. And so when we decided to move and to pick up our entire lives and move them to Florida, because we had gotten connected with these doctors, and my leg doctor is also here, what my 2-year-old calls it, the leg doctor, my prosthetic doctor. And we just knew that it was right for our lives. And that's that peace that you get when you're on the right track. And I think that's what God gives you, because you know that you're doing things in the right way, but then also when you're not on the right track, you know when you're doing them the wrong way too, because you have a very clear sign of that also.
Awesome. I just love your story. And I think we talked about this. This is one of the other questions I had, was around avoiding responsibility. I think we sort of talked about that when we talked about hands off the driver, hands off the wheel. So what I will ask you instead is, what advice would you give to someone wanting to successfully own their career?
I think the advice that I would give is to go for it, to believe that you can. The first, I believe that, I love the quote that says, 99% of it is showing up. And that's so true. Like I've been able to do things and experience things that I never thought I would ever experience. And the reason is that I showed up, that I asked the questions, that I sent the email. It may seem so far-fetched and something that would never happen, but it will never happen unless you try to make it happen. And so I look back on all the years that I feel like I wasted, and I never want to waste those years again. I never want to be, at the end of my life, whenever that may be, and regret a single thing that I have done. And I really feel like if I were to take my last breath tomorrow, at least I know that I have tried to make the most of my life. But I still have so much left that I want to do. And I just want to encourage other people to do the same thing. When I was asked to be a speaker 4 years ago, actually it's my 5th year. Holy cow, that's crazy. But I was contracted. Time is flying. I was contracted through a speakers bureau, and I didn't even know what a speakers bureau was. That's how clueless I was to this whole world. And they said that they had seen me on the media, and they were very interested in me doing a speech to see if I liked it. And I almost didn't show up to that speech. And I often think about that. And when I get really fearful, that's what I go back to. That girl that was so scared to get on that stage because she was scared to death of what I would say and how people would respond to me, how they would receive me. That day changed my life in so many ways because it wasn't what I was saying. It wasn't my story. It was the stories afterwards, after I got off stage and people saying, I needed to hear that today. Or, my mom is suffering from cancer and you made me look at things in a different way. Those are the things, because we have the ability to help people every minute of our days. We just have to decide that that's what we want to do. So part of owning our career is just owning every part of life in general, because the better your life is, the more joy you bring and the more joy you receive, the better your career and everything else professionally is going to be. But you have to show up and you have to give it your all every single day.
Absolutely, absolutely. Is there another example that you have of, you said far-fetched things, sending that email, and other than the speaking, that's just turned your world upside down or made it very different? What else happened that is just you never thought could have happened?
I think probably the text message that I got from one of the reporters that had interviewed me quite a few times in Boston, who is now one of my great friends. And she said, Rebekah, I know your story, but I know your whole story, and you really need to put a book together. And I said, Michelle, I don't know how to do this. But what was interesting is I had written things, or I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. What was interesting is that I had been wanting to write a book my entire life. This was a goal from the time I was 10 years old up until now. I had wanted to write my thoughts and feelings down in a book because I feel like there's so many different things in my life that have happened for a bigger purpose than I even knew. And so I sent the text back to my friend and I said, I don't know about this. This is a lot. I don't know what's going to happen. And long story short, it's about the showing up, the sending the emails, the participating in the calls. And I had my first book published in April of 2000. Oh my goodness, I don't even know, 2016. I'm thinking, wow, it's been a couple of years now. And that has just been an amazing avenue too. And, exposing yourself and putting yourself out there in a way that is really scary. I mean, every time that I get on stage, it's still scary to me because I'm putting myself out there, not only telling people about the business aspect, but it's about my entire personal life. I'm being so vulnerable and so transparent and giving my entire heart every time I speak about my book or at a speaking engagement. But I think that that's the most beautiful thing that you can offer someone is your full heart. Every struggle, every time that you didn't do the right thing, and every time you did, because you're constantly learning about yourself and you're becoming a better person as a result of it.
It's really amazing what you've been able to triumph and what you continue to do in your story and the lives that you're impacting. I especially love that you are focused on children and making it better for them. I love that. What resources have you found to be helpful in your career, online or otherwise?
I think that you constantly have to open yourself up to learn things because, when I set out on this journey, and I'm still on this journey, I'm still learning every single day. When I set out, I didn't know how I was going to do things. I just knew the passion that I had to do them. And I knew that I needed to surround myself with people that had already done things similar to this or had the knowledge about certain nuggets that I didn't. And so that's been really a big help. One of my biggest resources is just who I have in my life and who I ask questions to. But then also, we live in this age where you can Google anything. And so Google has just been my best friend because whenever I don't know something, I am researching and doing hours and hours of Google searches until I find exactly what I need. And that goes for YouTube and, several of the other things because I feel like you can find anything on the internet. And if you can't, you're just not searching in the right place. But
it's so true.
Yes. And you have to be willing to put in those hours. And that's the hardest part. I sometimes will get on my computer and work late into the night because I have my husband and my 11-year-old. And then I also have a 2-year-old daughter who is the light of our lives and sassy as she is sweet. But she takes up a lot of time and energy.
I absolutely know about that.
Yes. So, you have to put your focus on what are your priorities and what's going to allow you to live the life that you want in the future. So the resources are out there. There's so many different resources. There's workshops that you can go to. There's different classes that you can take. And, it's just a matter of what you're wanting to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a big proponent of education as well. I'm a lifelong learner, and I think you need to be successful. But what I love about what you were saying is about surrounding yourself with what you don't have. So the smarter people or the, wealthier or whatever it is that you find a gap for yourself, surround yourself with those people to help move you up or bring you along.
You will never backtrack when you surround yourself with positive, successful, life-loving people. When we backtrack is when we surround ourselves with negativity, people that are not wanting to be on the level that we want to be on, for whatever reason, and that's okay. I've had plenty of people that have been in my life for a season, and they've made an impact one way or the other, but you really have to focus on who you need in your corner and who is going to get you to where you want to be. And when you do that, when you separate, the negativity from the positivity, then it opens up doors that you never knew existed before.
Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, sharing your wisdom, your advice, and just for everything that we've had in this conversation. I appreciated it very much. Can you tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you or learn more about your story?
Absolutely. I have 2 websites. RebekahMGregory.com is more of a personal and for speaking, and I'm also on Facebook. It's Rebekah Gregory. And then also our Rebekah's Angels Foundation is RebekahsAngels.org. So those are the best ways to get in touch.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. We have enjoyed hearing about your journey and being in the driver's seat. Thank you, Rebekah.
So much. It's an honor. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.